Resident Evil Village is finally getting some downloadable content in the form of the Winters expansion, a 3-part downloadable content pack that includes a third-person mode for the base game, the arcade-style Mercenaries Additional Orders, in which you can play as Lady Dimitrescu striding around the place quaffing wine and putting on lipstick,
Yes! More!
and most interestingly, a new story-based expansion called Shadows of Rose.
What?
For those who've played through Resident Evil Village, Shadows of Rose might look familiar, but we've played a chunk of the DLC, and we're here to report that there are key differences that should be enough to draw curious Resident Evil Village completionists back into the world of survival horror. See for yourself in this new gameplay footage 6 ways Shadows of Rose is different to Resident Evil Village, and 1 way it's very similar. The eagle-eyed among you will have already spotted that Shadows of Rose ditches the first-person perspective of Resident Evil Village for a third-person over-the-shoulder view. It's not optional, this is the only viewpoint you can have for the DLC, but if your favourite Resident Evil are the ones prior to 7, it's a nice return to the style that made the series famous. Plus, if anything awful happens to your hands in this one, you don't have to look at it in first person, so that's nice. It does make the controls a bit tankier, which can make things tricky when you're trying to avoid getting murdered by monsters, but that's only what, 85% of the game? You'll be fine. As part of the Winters Collection DLC, they've also added an optional third-person mode to the main game. If you spin the camera around quickly enough, you might finally get a look at Ethan's face. We live in hope. Conversely, if you want Resident Evil Village to be even more first-person, it's coming out on PSVR 2 as well. Basically, however you want to look at all the horrible things in Resident Evil Village, Capcom has got you covered. Another thing you'll probably have noticed by this point is that you are no longer playing as Ethan Winters on account of, spoiler alert, everything that happened at the end of the main game.
Happy birthday.
In Shadows of Rose, you're playing as the grown-up version of Ethan's daughter Rose, who we saw as a baby in the main game, and briefly as a teen in the game's ending sequence, where she was being minded by shadowy government agent types who refer to her as having powers.
I can show you things even Chris doesn't know I can do.
Anyway, Rose doesn't seem to be adversely affected by having been split into component parts and put in jars when she was a baby, and she seems pretty handy with a pistol, which is good considering all the things you're going to have to shoot along the way.
Alright.
Those powers that the government guys were alluding to, they make up a big part of the Shadows of Rose DLC, and in the section we played, we were seeking special canisters to boost Rose's abilities and unlock new powers. The first of these powers was used to help unlock new areas, more on that in a second, but the next most useful power was one you can use to slow down your enemies, a bit like the stasis ability from Dead Space. Once slowed, enemies are much more vulnerable to your attacks, or you can just use the opportunity to make a run for it, or to try and juke past them, and let me tell you, it really helps offset the slight additional awkwardness of third-person controls. There are limits on how much you can use it, but I can see this saving our bacon on the regular when we play the full thing. Rose isn't alone on her journey. As she goes, she encounters mysterious sparkles and weird glowing writing that seems to want to help her out, giving her hints about what to do next, and, more usefully, conjuring guns and ammo from thin air. Who is behind this mysterious writing? Is it Ethan? It's probably Ethan, right? Still, we're going to have to wait to find out, but honestly, whoever's doing this, are you paying by the letter? Because rocket launcher would be a lot more useful next time. Thanks. As if the enemies we encountered in the original Resident Evil Village weren't bad enough, Shadows of Rose introduces new monsters called Face Eaters, which, I mean, that name doesn't lie. These horrible, persistent, extremely nude face-sucking monsters are a new threat for Shadows of Rose, and you're very incentivized to not let them get too close to you, because when they do, this happens, and yes, we're going to have to see it again. They kind of remind us of the moulded from Resident Evil 7, only a bit crustier, which obviously no one needed, but be prepared to face a lot of these suckers because they are everywhere. And yes, we've seen what happens if you die from the face sucking, and it's exactly as horrible as you'd imagine. Try and avoid it, my advice. Also effing up your day in Shadows of Rose is this red goo, which is absolutely everywhere.
No way I'm waiting for that.
It'll block your path, and if you accidentally wander into it and don't get out pronto, you'll get dragged under by a gang of face eaters in a cutscene so traumatic, you're unlikely to do it again. Ugh. Once you've acquired Rose's first power, however, you can clear the mystery goo by finding these strange flowers dotted around the world and concentrating your power into the core, which turns that area of red goo to ash, for reasons we doubt will make more sense when the DLC actually comes out. But this allows you to access new areas and occasionally freeze items that were trapped within. If you're struggling to find the flower you need to destroy, you can follow the red-looking pipes to the source, although be warned, there are probably about 6 face eaters trying to eat your face at any given time. So make it quick, yeah?
I wonder where I might find the next rabbit.
They're gone.
While all those elements of Shadows of Rose are new, you'll have noticed that this whole segment is taking place somewhere very familiar, the goth dream house of Castle Dimitrescu. Apparently, the DLC takes place 16 years after the events of Resident Evil Village, inside the mind of the giant fetus-shaped colony of evil mold living under the village, aka the Megamycete superorganism. But in the bit we played, it turns out the mind of the Megamycete superorganism looks a lot like the exact layout of Lady D's crib, which you'll remember we kind of knocked down in the main game. Yeah, like that. Still, at least you won't be being chased around by an 8-foot-tall vampire because, unlike 90% of the internet, it seems the Megamycete isn't fantasizing about Lady Dimitrescu. I mean, you've got the new Mercenaries mode for that. So that was a quick look at the Shadows of Rose DLC for Resident Evil Village, which comes with the new Gold Edition of the game, or is buyable for $20 if you're an old-school Village enjoyer. And that's out on October the 28th, just in time for Halloween. Will you be buying this expansion, or are you done with Resident Evil Village? Let us know in the comments, and hit the like button and subscribe for more on the DLC as we get it. Thanks for watching.